Good morning, Career Devs. We are streaming on the Silicon Road. I got audio. All right, good. So, what we are going to be working on today is our first dive together as a group. Some of you may have already been fiddling with APIs. This is going to be our first dive together as this class going into APIs. And we're going to go back to what we worked on a couple weeks ago when we worked with the News API. So, pull the screen up. Go ahead and do this quick. Evening. All right. JS, objects, JSON objects. So we can start from there. All right. Again, we're going back to our objects. And this file here, what type of object is that? Is that actually a JavaScript file? I know it has the .js, but would JavaScript actually accept this? Why? Right, well, no, not the script tags. Yeah, it's just a JSON object. There's no var equals. Now, JavaScript might accept it, it just won't do anything with it. I'm just blatantly stating a JavaScript object, but I'm not assigning it to a variable or anything, so the interpreter is going to read it and then drop it. That doesn't really help us much. So what we really want to do is start getting used to this, though, because what this is this is how, at least most sites nowadays, 90% of sites, now tend to reply to any request for data from them in a JSON format, because JavaScript has become so pervasive in the entire web industry, and it is such a very readable item by itself once you put it into what's called a pretty print, which is this kind of enter these kind of line returns and indentations. If I remember correctly, when we went back to the newsapi.org, so let's go ahead and head back to that site. You guys remember this site? newsapi.org. We come back here again. We switch over to the documentation. I'm just going to pull this up quick. Let's see. Endpoints. Wait, is that the right one? Oh, they are updating to version 2. Wow, okay. This is going to be fun to play with now. They have modified their site now. Cool, okay. So they have a new endpoint of top headlines. Now, these are the two we've been working with, sources and everything. They've apparently added a third endpoint, so this is going to be a little interesting for you guys. But it is perfectly fine to do this. It just changes our URL a bit, and the documentation is a little more modern. That could be nice for you guys. If we were here, though, this seems to be the same as we looked at last time. So they did just kind of modify a little bit where they had the word required here instead of having the word optional inside of the description as like they did last time. But overall, if we come back over here, we can grab this. Everybody is there. So again, we went to documentation and went to sources on the endpoints. We're going to grab this URL. Let's go ahead and copy, new tab, and paste that in. Now, since we have that extension from last time, that JSON view, this should load in a nice format similar to what we have on Cloud9. But for the moment, I'm going to go ahead and just, again, refresh everybody to what this actually looks like. So extensions, and this is what it's going to look like for anybody who did not get this. Oh, I didn't need to do that. I need to go ahead and disable what I currently have. So JSON view, disable. And we can refresh, and we'll see that is not something we want to read as a human. Now, a computer can definitely go through and read this. It's going to look for certain symbols. We still see, and part of me can't really use the laser pointer as much anymore because I want to make sure this shows up on the stream as well. But right here, can I zoom in? How do I do zoom in with Mac again? Control, there it goes. Good enough. So we still see the same symbols we're used to seeing. We have our curly brace there. We have the double quotes around the key and our double quotes around the value. We still see bracket symbols for arrays. So all the stuff is still there, and a computer can just read through this. White space isn't necessary for a computer to work or for code to work. It's necessary for a human in order for a human to read it. But a computer doesn't care that there's no space between this comma, or after the comma, or before the comma, or anything of that nature. There's no space before or after the colon here. Because again, computers don't care about empty space. They care about certain characters. That's all they care about. The white space and the carriage returns are for us. Let's go ahead and re-enable our extension now. Enable, now refresh. Okay. And as you saw, when we did the pretty print, it did take the double quotes around away from the ID, but if you remember when we just looked at it, status had double quotes around it. That's JSON notation, but again, JavaScript, you actually use JavaScript. An object doesn't have to have double quotes around the key. It can, because again, that's accepted. But JSON objects do require that double quote just so that it identifies them. Yep.
Those dashes between the items and the arrays, is that something pretty print?
Yes, okay. These are collapsers. So yes, the dashes. So we're asking about these little dashes right here as part of pretty print. When I hovered over them, see how they highlight a certain section?
Right, okay.
Clicking on those just allowed me to collapse as a nice little extra feature, so I can bring things down. I can see, is there anything after sources? No, okay. So that's the point of the dashes. Those aren't part of JavaScript object notation or JavaScript objects. Even certain editors will actually have you the ability to collapse certain code blocks separated by curly brackets or array brackets. So, all right, let's see. So what we're going to do is take a quick second and do a sanity check to make sure everybody's still fresh from over the weekend. So 1 second. So everybody should actually pull up this page right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do another refresh because you're going to grab 2 items from this. You're going to use JavaScript code to go into this object and grab certain information. So. See. I'm going to get let's see. I want to grab. There's that one. Let's go ahead and do get the how do I say that word? Afton Ghostin. Ghostin or Postin? Afton Ghostin. There we go. And then we'll do one more. And we'll also do the get the URL for the there we go. API practice. Send. All right, so in the classroom, you're going to have a URL to actually go ahead and test yourself on these couple items. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, send it into the classroom. Daytime class. Announcement. API. Practice. Form. Yeah, actually, I'm going to go ahead and mark this as an assignment so you guys can mark that you've actually completed the form. Today. Paste that in. Just make things nice. I will go ahead and do this on the form itself as well. Then you'll copy and paste that link with your API key, of course, if you don't already have it, which you should technically be already looking at it. But in case you aren't, add link. Topic is classwork. Assign. All right, and just to see what this looks like, I'll throw this up here for the stream. Here are the 3 questions you're answering. The status of the object, get the description of the often posted source, and the URL of the associated press source. So you'll need to look through and actually find these items to know which number it is. But it should be the same number as mine. So it should be in the same order. If not, let me know, but they should be in the same order. So you'll need to do a little searching to know which one you need to do.
You want us to copy and paste the information?
No, so again, you're going to use object notation to grab that object as if this was in a JavaScript. So let me go ahead and actually add a description to this quick. So do that actually. Treat the object as if it is inside a variable data. Var data equals object. I'll refresh this page. So if you refresh the form, you should see another bit on the description. So you're just going to do the object.notation to grab that data out of it as if we took this object and put it inside of a variable called data. Take a couple minutes to do that. All right. So again, the process of this was to navigate the object like we did with the last two projects. Where we had an object, we wanted to navigate through it to find that data. So when I pull this over, I'm not going to go ahead and show who did what, because doesn't really help you learn, that just embarrasses. We can see here, this is not what we asked for. This is close enough. This is kind of close, but it's not really what we're looking for, because again, that's JavaScript notation. That's not prefixing the beginning of the variable on it. This again is giving the data. This one, again, you're literally pulling it. This is kind of going away from the idea of a dynamic item. If you're actually putting in the answer, your code is not dynamic. And so right here is the one we were looking at. And honestly, though, I would take items like this, or where was it over here? Saw it where it was the answer, just didn't prefix the word data on top of it. Here we are, status to description. So this one right here is valid in essence of it is navigating the object. Again, we did want to make sure we added that data in front of it. So when you're going into your JavaScript code, you do need to take any JavaScript object notation and put it inside of a containing variable, inside of a box. So that way you can then navigate it and reference it anywhere in the code. So again, with the idea of dynamic, you never want to know that you're going to copy out the code or the information from a certain key, because technically this thing's always updating, always changing. A news API news source here could decide to close shop, and then that source is gone. So that's one less data point. On the other hand, another news source could connect to news API and start providing data to them. So they can then grow their sources, and again, that means their number of sources would grow. So you can't rely on static data to know for sure what's available from newsapi.org. They could change on a dime. As we just saw between the last stream we did and now, they're actually even changing their API to their version 2 API. So you can't rely on just taking static data. Making sure that you're bringing in the object values, things like that, is better. Technically, in this whole process that we did, when I said to get me the apt and post and source, in real essence, you would actually have a process that would go through the object itself, check the name of each source, and find that number. We wouldn't actually put the static number, but for practice, this worked. For that very specific moment, we knew that we wanted source 2, which is actually the third source because of zero indexing. So what can we do with this? Well, let's look back at the api.org. What was the other endpoint we had here? It's now called, it's now not called what we had. It was called articles before, and they split it into two types now. So the one we're going to be doing this time is everything. Oh, no, not everything, because that looks to be everything from all sources. Yeesh. Top headlines. We'll be doing that one. Because if we look here in top headlines, this will get us the top headlines from a specific source. As it says right here. Sources equals BBC News. So we can actually give them a specific source. So we can let our users decide, I want to see the top headlines for this source. But to get the source, these source IDs up here, if we look down the parameters again from last week, if we looked at it last week, we would have seen that source here. How do we get the sources? Somebody read that and raise your hand when you think you understand how we get the sources. We actually have two methods now, which is kind of nice. I'll take one of the methods. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I
Oh,
was asking a question.
so, you're asking a question?
No, what was your?
Oh, if we want to make sure we know the way of sending which source we want, how do we get that item there? 'Cause again, these have to be URL encoded. The URLs provide the ability to do spaces. Can you put a space in a URL technically? No, you do a percent encryption, percent encoding. Do they allow, well, here's one. Do they allow ampersands for actual data? Or does the ampersand have a certain thing that it does specifically in a URL? Yeah, it does something already, kind of like the slash in a string, right? You can't put a slash by itself in a string, can you? Why? Do you remember what the slash does in a string? Not in the string. What's that? Kind of a break, yeah. What's the other term? It's not, the term isn't break, the term is an escape character. The backslash is an escape character saying, hold on for a second, I need you to do something specific for me. So we want a backslash in our string, we have to do backslash backslash. If we have a string with double quotes and we want a double quote in our string, we have to do backslash double quotes. Same with an ampersand. Ampersands in URLs are used as a delimiter for the get variables. If we remember correctly when we look back at that URL from this over here, we can see over here that our sources or API, well, all we need from here actually is the API key. So that really doesn't make up an example. But back here, if we look at the example they gave for news sources, we can see the ampersand separates the source from the API key. So this is what's causing these two items to be separate. That's what the ampersand is. So our source, let's say a news source uses the ampersand in their name. We can't use the ampersand in these sources equals because that would just cut it. So newsapi.org has a set of IDs or string IDs that they can use to identify each one. Because BBC News doesn't have a dash in their name, do they? See right here, they don't. BBC News has, well, one, capitals, and they have a space. But capitals, again, don't really matter in the URL. So how do we get, so the question I'm wondering is, how do we get these IDs here? If we want to get these IDs so we know a user can search for a certain source, and also that, just get all those IDs, looking at this, for example, how do we know we can get it? There's two ways we can get the source IDs. It says it in this description. What's one? Sorry, someone raise hands so I can come close. Okay. The source index. So what is the downside of using the source index?
Yeah, it's not dynamic.
Right. If they update, you have to be constantly checking that file to make sure that you're using the most recent version of the sources index with their most recent sources. It's good. It's one of those items that's not going to change too often because they're not going to be changing sources that much, but they could. So there's always that chance that you could either be missing a new source or that a source that they had decided to no longer use the service and pull out, and then your code's going to break. So it's not bad. It's just not dynamic. What is the other method? You know it? Try. Right. And slash sources endpoint is what we just played with, wasn't it? Slash sources right here. And if we look back over here, out of each and every one of these sources, what is the first value in each one, in each object? What's the first one? Letter? ID. So we notice that the ID up here is definitely a URL encoded variation of the name of it. So we got ABC News right here with the dash. Down here we got ABC News, I think that's Australia, right? Yep, Australia. And normally it's in parentheses, but they did ABC News-AU. So we can see that for each source, we also, in the source endpoint, we get the ID for each source as well. So we can programmatically ask the API to give us the sources, find that source, and find the ID for that source. So thinking back to what we've just recently done, what you guys have recently worked on, could we use this to then let the user decide on our website what top headlines, which news source they want the top headlines from? Could we do that?
Maybe you could use it in an unclick function.
An unclick function, yep. So we could use some sort of form, right? So we could technically say, hey, APInews.org, give me your sources, give me a list of them, and I'm going to let my user pick. On top of that, we can still, is there other ways we can modify this source endpoint? So looking at the parameters, can anybody give me a way we could modify the results from our sources? yeah, we can use the parameters. What's one parameter we could use, and what can we do with it? Let's take, for example, language. What does that do for us?
That narrows it down but it falls to all languages.
Right.
So give me your top headlines in English.
Yeah. If we add the language en for English, we say, hey, sourcesapi.org, newsapi.org, give me all the news sources that report in English. We took I don't know if I can remember exactly where it was, but somewhere in here I saw another language. Here we are. That I can't read. Now someone might be able to, but I know I can't. So for me, this doesn't really help me. Someone in that environment that knows that language could use it, but for most Americans, probably not. Most, not all. So we could default that, but of course, if you knew someone who does know that language, you can allow them to have that one. And so find sources that display news in a specific language. So country or category, what could we use for that? Can we use either one of those? Which one and how can we use it? Hearing someone might have an answer?
US,
Yeah, we could do country. Say only give me news sources that are based in the United States and report in the United States. And last one, category. Well,
Give me the business news from the United States in English.
yeah, we could even use all three. That's something we really could do. We could really fine-tune our little site here to say, give me all your sources from the United States that report in English that are about business. We could definitely do that. So what we're going to do next is one more sanity item for you guys, is just to create that URL. So you can get a little more practice on it. We did one of these before, but now we're going to do it again. So API practice 2 to URL formation. API key is needed. Use API key ABC 123. What URL do we use? Back up one. Assignment. So again, you can use the current item we have, for example, and the example from top headlines as a way to how to form your URL. What we are asking you to create is the URL that when entered. Hold on, that's using a. Don't click on that link yet because it's doing a multiple choice option for some reason. Thanks Google for autofilling that. Now you can go ahead and click. If you did click on the form, just refresh it. You should get the text-based answer now. So if refresh, go, with the original one. And so mainly I'm just saying if you think that the URL does require an API key, I did provide you a junk API key to use. You don't have to upload yours. And that allows us all to have the same API key. So I've also added the items. So what we're creating here is just a URL that if we would enter this into our browser, it will return back with the sources that report on business in English from the United States. Take a shot creating that. For those watching the stream, just pause the video and try it yourself. Boink. All right. So take another peek. Go ahead and pull this back over again. Take a look at some of the examples. So go back to here individual quick. So first one here, I'm already going to say, wait, this is not the one I was expecting. Oh, right, I went forward one. So correct, this will work. Just this person might want to go to their profile and now hit the reset API key button. So if you recognize this and you put your key in there, this is now on the stream, you might want to reset your key. So for this, if some people saw this as a very similar seeming practice item, it's because it was. When we did this API before, I did ask for the same information. Language, category, and business and country were the same. And remember in version 1, you didn't need the API key. They've now modified that. Apparently people have been probably abusing the sources endpoint and hitting it like crazy. And so now in version 2, they require. That's why this thing is in bright red now. So now you need an API key for the sources endpoint to use version 2, which is going to give you more data anyway. So their version 2 is better, and because of that, they also want you to put the API key again so they know who's asking for it 15 times in an hour. So for those of you who decided to be smart and use the version 1 variation of it and just copy paste the last one, not fun, not fair, but valid URL. As long as you understand the URL and know what the small differences are between this one and the next one, that is fine. And here's our first one that is fully correct. That also used the junk API that I did give. So we can see we have our endpoint, and I like how this one actually got double lined. So on the first line there, we actually have the endpoint itself. And that's going to be fun on the stream. As soon as I'm walking by, that's awesome. So again, just to vicinity, what does this question mark do for us? What does the question mark do? What is it?
Search for that category.
What does it do?
Search. It
It doesn't search.
Submits the query.
What's it?
Submits the query.
Separates, right? Was it?
Submits
Oh, submits a query. Kind of, yes. Submit can work. It's technically the separator. It says after this are my key value pairs for information. So after the question mark, everything after this are what are called what type of variables? Because what kind of URL request is this? Anyone remember? What type of request is this? It's the 3-letter all caps word we used. Not API. It's actually in the documentation. Close, not sure quite though. If we go back to the documentation, we go to the sample. What's the 3-letter word? It's a GET request. So what type of variables are these? Yeah, GET variables. These are our GET parameters is the better way of putting it. So everything after the question mark are our GET parameters, our key value pairs. Remember, and there's another type of request you're going to get into later on called a post. So when you start sending data that you want to get saved into a database on that API or on your sites, that's going to use a post, and that won't be in this format with the question mark and stuff, because let's say you wanted to create a new user. You want to create a new user, and they're going to need a password. You don't want their password on the URL, do you? It's going to be very, very insecure, isn't it? If I could see password right there in the URL, it's going to be very, very bad. And so post puts it in the background. It's still a little, it's not 100% secure. You'll learn again as you keep going more ways to secure data that's sent across. That's what HTTPS does. But just basically offset, just right off the bat, you do not want to put somebody's password in your URL, which is right there visible on the screen. So you'll learn about that stuff soon. And that uses a different syntax than this, but yeah, the most common are these GET ones, which is just give me information, here's the data for it, and so we give it this variable category, and we say for category, I want anything that qualifies as a business. Under the country, I want US for United States, and for language, I want EN for English. And here's my API key so you know who I am. And what that's going to do, if we actually would take this, and then I'll go ahead and inject my API key instead. Let's copy this. What we do is just on this sources here, I'm just going to actually copy that without API key because I have API key here. So question mark all the way back, copy, back to my URL, and do here all the way back, paste, hit enter. We can see we get sources, so that's a good sign. And what we got here, we got business, EN, US, for Bloomberg. Again, business, EN, US, Business Insider, sounds very businessy. We only have like 5 of them, right? 5 or 6, how many? 5. We only have 5 of them. And they're all business news sources that are in the United States that report in English. So that's exactly what we wanted. So now we know we could set that our setup to make sure that we only get those sources that fit a certain requirement. So let's start actually doing that now, because let's actually do an API call. So if you remember from last time, last little practice we did, I gave you guys a template, boilerplate. Because again, I'm no longer walking you through HTML. That's something you guys should have at least enough of a hand point on now that you guys can go and find the stuff you need and learn it yourself. So to save us time on that, I have another URL for you guys. Let's go ahead and copy this. Go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead to the classroom, and I'm going to post that as an announcement. GitHub URL for News API org practice. Now again, you guys aren't modifying this. This is a public item. So what are you going to do with this? Louder? Fork it. Make your own copy. Because now you can make changes to it and push those changes to your own repo to count as a comment in one of those green boxes again on your GitHub profile. So you want to clone this, and if you want to clone it, fork it first, then clone your version. You want to see your name / news API org template. Okay. I put it on the classroom too. Oh wait, yeah, I did it as an announcement. So wait, hold on. That did not copy what I wanted to copy. That copy, weird. I see it, hold on. I'll try copying it again, because yeah, I pasted the name of it, not the link. Weird. Yeah, hold on. Try that again. Saving. There it is, the link's there now. Yeah, if you go to the classroom, there's an announcement with the link. Fork it, then clone your version. Your version should say your username / newsapi.org. Sorry, use newsapi org template. If you're cloning CareerDevs 1, you're not going to have access to push to it. You're able to download, you're able to make changes, but the second you try to push, it's going to yell at you saying you don't have access. So do not clone this pages. So if I get any push requests to this or pull requests to this, I'm going to deny them.
Should it go in the cloning folder or should it go in a different?
Whichever one you want to do. Cloning works because it is something you're cloning again. Again, I only created the cloning folder for myself to keep track of it. So that was a folder you guys didn't actually have to create, but if you created it, you can use it if you want.
The command is clone or git clone?
Git clone. Yep. And then the address. If you're having trouble remembering how to clone, see if any of your neighbors remember and are willing to share the information.
I just guessed it then.
Really?
We should pull this down and have a nice local repo.
Not yet, I'm gonna think of that.
So I'm going to do the same because I don't want to do the CareerDevs one. I'm going to fork this myself from my name. So you guys see it again, how this works. Now this is the one I want. Forked. Got this. And so for myself, one of the things I always say the first thing you should be doing is, well, actually, not always say, after cloning this, what should have been the first thing you did?
LS.
Oh yes, LS, make sure you got it, and CD'd into it, and then what should you have done next? What's that? I've never. I like it.
We did it together.
That works. What else? It's a good thing you could have done right after downloading this.
Does it get status?
Hmm?
Files.
Open the file. Take a look at it. Look at what you got. Look at this template that you were given and see what it looks like. What have we been given to us? Looking at this file, what can we already kind of glean off of it? Just looking at it.
We have a jQuery library.
Yeah, we have a jQuery library. Yep. We got Bootstrap already connected. We have Bootstrap. We have jQuery. We got an index file that's empty, or the index.js file that's empty. Yep, we got a drop-down menu that is empty. We got a select item here. Nothing inside of it, but we do have this select tag right here. That's kind of nice. So we have all this stuff, so we already have a pretty good idea of what we're using. And so right now we're going to be teaching the jQuery version of pulling data from an API, just because it's a little faster to get into getting it working, because right now our biggest focus is understanding APIs, not understanding the pure JavaScript of it, and you can always get that later. Right now we want to simplify the pulling the data down, because the more important stuff is we're saying, give me the data, getting the data, and then accessing the data. That's more important right now, getting used to that process first, before we get into straight JavaScript. So the first thing we're going to do is just kind of walk through getting data. And so let's take an idea here. So there's two ways of coding in JavaScript. There's two ways of coding. So the first method we have is I have the ability of just asking for information, a single thread. So I can go up to somebody and see, has anybody been quiet today? Actually, not too much, but I'm going to go over here this time. Quick question for you. Can you get me the stock price for Facebook right now?
Stock price for
Yeah.
Facebook.
Stock price is 182.56. Okay, I got it. So that seemed a little awkward, though. I was just standing there waiting for it. I wasn't doing anything else. There's another thing I can do, though, where I can do something more like this, where I can go to over here and I can say, Lauren, can you get me the stock price of, how helps if I do this, Google? And while I'm doing this one, I can come over here and say, Greg, can you get me the stock price of, let's see, Tesla?
Oh, that was good.
And while they're doing that, I can wait for other requests. Let's see if I want to do anything else. Now I'm waiting for two at the same time. I'm doing two things. I've asked twice now. If I wanted to, I could even grab another piece of paper and ask again, price of Facebook again. I could go ask someone else for that. Got it? Okay.
You should buy it right now.
So in this case, Greg raised his hand and said, hey, I got your data for him. I come and grab it and say, okay, Tesla's 31317. Lauren says, I got it. So I come back, I grab it. I go, okay, Google is $1,000.65. I would probably buy more Tesla because that's just easier to get involved into. just because it's a lower price tag. I can get into it easier without having to put up so much up front. But what I did there is, what did I do there in that example compared to the first one?
You had more than one thing going at a time, so you were able
Right.
to get more done quicker.
Exactly. Another way of putting it would be multitasking. But in code, the term you're looking for is asynchronous. So you're doing multiple things at once, and I'm waiting for that task that I sent out. So I sent the task to Lauren, I sent the task to Greg, and I waited for one of them to say, hey, I got it. So they called back and said, hey, I'm ready. I have data for you. I took the data from them and then ran my code, which was to say it out loud. And so that's the more concept you're going for that. And the term for that is AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. A little strange, but I'm actually going to put it up on the screen so you can see it. Ajax. It's not the cleaner, by the way. Yep. So Ajax, asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. I don't know why they're not spelling it out. There it is. Okay. Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. XML is the other format that data can be sent back. It looks very similar to HTML. It's a markup language. That's the ML, markup language. I don't remember what X is. I don't know, you remember that off the top of your head?
Extensible.
Extensive. Ugh, that's a fun word.
And this really should be called AJAG because it's not, they don't use it with XML anymore. It's mostly used with JSON.
Yeah. They really should drop the X. XML is really going out of fashion. You can find a few people still kind of fiddling with it, but it really is dropping out. Ajax requires more bits to send the same data because just like in HTML, you need an opening tag and a closing tag, where JavaScript just has the curly bracket, closing bracket. Much less data bandwidth. And Ajax, since again, asynchronous, what this allows you to do is that this is something you've been using a lot, Ajax, or the concept of Ajax. How many people here use Facebook? Exactly. Everybody put up their hands just for the stream. I'm sure all of you did too. How many of you have actually used the messenger feature at least once in it? Again, all hands have gone up. Did you have to refresh your page or go to another page to get the new message? No. As soon as the message came in, that thing popped right into your screen. What is happening in the background is Facebook is constantly running Ajax requests, sending out a request saying, hey, are there any new messages? Hey, are there any new messages? Hey, are there any new messages? And once it gets one, it comes back and says, yeah, here you go. It then pops up on the screen a new thing without having to refresh. It's asynchronously checking for new data. And as soon as it gets it, it updates the page you're on without having to refresh. That's one of the benefits of JavaScript. You guys did that yourself when we did last time with that dynamic drop-down menu. You selected a new item from the drop-down menu or the radio buttons. You clicked on a new one, and instantaneously the page changed without having to reload the page. So that's one of the biggest pushes that JavaScript has given power to developers of websites, is this ability to give interactivity to a page without having to constantly refresh, without having to go navigate. Anybody here remember old school web forms, or not forms, forums? We had the message boards. You had to, when you left a message, you had to submit, it refreshed, load it up. If you wanted to see a response, you had to keep refreshing and going back again and checking for that new response. Those days are gone and past because of Ajax. Now things are more instantaneous. They pop in as soon as they're available. Because of these asynchronous requests, they keep checking for new data. And as soon as they find it, they update the page you're on instead of refreshing it.
I think our Google Classroom is like that too.
Exactly.
Because when you post that in there, I don't have to refresh. I can hit show and then it can show up.
Yeah.
And also the show notification itself.
Yep. The reason why they don't automatically show it is because they don't want things moving on you. Because of the way that class stream is a top-down method, anytime I put a new post, it's going to pop at the top and everything's going to push down. So what it does is it just says, hey, this has been updated. Do you want me to show it? Because if it tries to show it automatically, if things are going rapidly, let's say you guys are actually much more, or I'm much more rapidly entering stuff, you're putting up comments and alerts and, hey, look, I found this, or look, I found that. That stream is just going to keep going down, 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 down. You're going to get very fast, very quickly annoyed at it. So instead, it says, hey, there's new stuff. Do you want to put it? Saying that Twitter does the same thing. When you're on Twitter, it doesn't automatically show the new tweets. It says, hey, there are new tweets. Let me know when you want me to display them. When you click on that button, it doesn't refresh the page to show them, it just adds them to the top of the queue. So again, it doesn't annoy you by pushing everything down constantly, repeatedly. But it's still an asynchronous item. When you do, it does automatically let you know, hey, there's new items waiting. And when you click to show them, it doesn't refresh the page, it just adds them to the top of the list. There's more behind it too that makes it such a fluid item, that it's so fluid looking, but it's the basic gist of it is asynchronous Java AJAX. It's constantly sending out GET requests to ask for more information. So let's go ahead and take an example of AJAX. Let's just see if we can get the data. So this is going to do the pure JavaScript method, it looks like. Yeah, that's pure JavaScript. So we're going to go to the jQuery version of it. jQuery AJAX. So jQuery take is a asynchronous HTTP request. It's going to take the parameters of a URL, the location, the destination we want to grab data from, that we want to request the data from, any settings we want to give it. And settings is a, what type does that say again? I know it uses a word called plain object, but what's the big keyword there? Yeah, exactly. It'll take an object of settings. So that way you can set in more information, like, again, what type of request? Again, I mentioned two already. Does anyone remember those two types of HTTP requests that I just mentioned? GET request was one. Did anyone remember that second one I mentioned? Louder? Post. Post. GET and post. So that could be one of the settings that it's asking for. What type of request is this? Is it a GET request or a POST request? For example. And what it says actually right here is, yeah, this is the settings section. So it's going to say settings can do accepts. Accepts is just saying what type of data back am I accepting. So in most cases, you'll just do the default, which is JavaScript. So if you don't specify an accepts, it'll default to JavaScript. Async, again, this is just saying, do you actually want to do the asynchronous process of AJAX, which 9 times out of 10, you're going to say yes unless that data is required for the site to continue loading. Most likely, you're going to say true, and so you're never going to do this. And there's a bunch of settings in here. Tons and tons of settings, as you can see. The big ones we care about, and this is something you can definitely look into later on, something you can look at, see what else there is here. Let's see. Let's head down to an example. We'll start there, actually. So here you go. So $.AJAX. We're used to that with the jQuery syntax. And here we can do $.AJAX URL. Here's a website. Before send, don't you worry about that. This is a override prime. That's a bit too much. Here we go. Right? Nah, I don't like that one. Yeah, they're giving you very complex examples of this. Ah, here we go. Okay, here's the same. Okay, now we're actually in examples. Those are still instructions above. That's why they were so complex. I'm like, why are they showing all this complex stuff still to start? Here we go. So a very basic request is you got the method post. The URL is some website. Here's the data we're going to send it, which that looks like an object, right? Very similar to how you do the question mark and the ampersand data. So you can send that. And then over here we have the .done. And .done function is a function that will run whether it was successful or not. Keep that in mind. .done will always run. If you actually look up above and actually look into this more, you can see that there's 3 of these. There's .done, .success, and .fail. So those are the 3 you have. .done always runs. .success would run, what do we think? If we got data back, right? And .fail would run if, what do we think? Yeah, if we couldn't connect to that end site. Now, yeah, we could connect to it and get data back, and that data back could be an error because we can always go to our, excuse me, if we go back here to our API, if I wipe out my API key and don't provide it, I do get a response. It just gives me an error message of you do not, your API key is missing. So I do get a response. So that would trigger the success function of the API call of Ajax. I did connect to the API. I did get data back. It's up to me now to check the status code of whether I got a success or error, and then respond accordingly. So all the dot success and dot fail methods do is to check whether is to say, oh, I did connect to the API and I did get something back from the API. Dot fail would be I typed in a URL and got nothing back. If I, let's say, misspelled the API here and did OR instead of ORG and hit enter, that's going to give me this. This would trigger a fail. I didn't connect to the API. Or I got if I was saying I only want, let's say, XML, use API.org and reply with JSON, that'll trigger a fail because I didn't get the right acceptance type. I didn't get the right data type that I was expecting. So that's the difference between success and fail. Success doesn't mean you actually got the data you wanted, and that's something to always keep in mind. Success just means I connected to the URL I gave you, and it replied back with data that I'm expecting, or a data type that I'm expecting, which is JSON. So you still have to have that one extra step of checking, did I get a success? So let's just do a quick creation of one of these. So let's go ahead and copy this. So it's just so you guys see, the URL for this code is api.jquery.com/jquery.ajax? Yep, .ajax. Huh. And you're going to scroll down to the examples and just copy the first example. Yep. I'm going to do a little bit extra though. So every time I use jQuery, there's one way I like to start off my jQuery. What's the reason why we put our script tag at the bottom of the HTML page? Do you remember that? Why do we do that? Yeah, we want the whole page to load first. Remember, JavaScript has a function that ensures that 100%. Do you remember what that is? Document.onReady, right? And so whenever I work with jQuery, I 90% of the time always provide that little form there because I do enjoy how well that item helps me out. So I will always do my jQuery functions like this: document.ready function open brackets. This just, again, 100% guarantees that this code won't run until the entire HTML page loads, whether or not my JavaScript file is at the bottom or the top. Now, for those of you just for sanity checks, if we look at the index file, do I actually need that function in this case? Where is the script tag here? So I don't necessarily need this. My tags are making sure that the index.js file is not loading until the very end. But just again, for the sanity checks, I am using jQuery, and my jQuery call is down here. I just want to make sure that it's all loading in the right order. So I just have it all together. And this is just, again, that sanity check to make sure I know that this code is only going to run when the page is done loading. It just makes that very clear to anybody outside. So now the next item. This gets really annoying. This dollar symbol getting that little flag. The reason why you get that is because we're using what's called an alias, and again, we're loading the jQuery page that defines what the $ is, var $ equals something, is defined in another file. This file doesn't know that you're connecting them on the HTML side. This file doesn't have access to that knowledge. It only knows what's happening inside of itself. And so the workaround for this is just create a one-line comment. Now this is also how you do multi-line comments for anybody who isn't aware of that. The /* allows you to do multi-line comments. The comment ends when you do the * reverse. So if you want to have like a paragraph for a comment, you just start it with the /*, enter your paragraph, close it with //, and you don't have to keep doing double slashes on every single line, which can be a bit convenient. So that's all that syntax is of the /* and //. But the syntax is we're just going to let this file know that the $ is something we know about. It's a global variable. It's something that's accessible outside of this file. It's global. And so we're going to say global $**/. This is just our way of telling this file, hey, stop warning me about the $. I know you don't know what it is, but trust me, as a human, I'm telling you that it's defined somewhere else and you have access to it. And so it gets rid of the warnings. That make sense?
Oh, I didn't know you could affect the environment. I didn't know.
Yep. This is specific to editors. So most editors follow this syntax because it's been globally accepted. So that way it does that, but it is not provided by JavaScript. This is a editor thing.
I missed this part actually, Cliff. Is it like commenting? We do this commenting?
Yeah, it's a multi-line comment. Yep.
So when we're dealing outside of jQuery
Yes.
and we're getting something, this is not a global
Yep.
variable, can we do a comment like that
Yeah.
to make it global?
So yeah, so here's the question is, can this be used for things other than jQuery? And yeah, let's say you actually decide that you have a second JavaScript file that defines a bunch of, let's say, static variables. Because we all know 12 inches is a foot. And let's say we're creating a website that does conversion rates for us. Instead of having all my static values of all the measurement conversion rates in the same file that's going to do the code, I might want to have a JavaScript file of all my constant data. And so I put a whole bunch of var inches or foot equals 12 for inches. I know that I'm going to convert a foot to inches as a global variable. So f2i, I would put that as a global variable in this other file. I'm going to link these two files in the HTML. So this file wouldn't know that I've defined this f2i variable. I can do the same /global $/star, but with the other variable. Like let's say again, I create this. Where's my mouse? There it is. If I do var feet equals f2i times 24, which if we did again, defined f2i as 12, meaning it's 12 inches, and 24 is the number of inches we have, right now I'm getting the warning. It's telling me feet is defined but never used. But also the second item is f2i is not defined. Please fix, or add a global. So what I can do again is go down another line right here, and I like to do the tab space f2 global f2i. We notice a little warning went away. It's telling us that f2i is okay. We're telling the code, it's like, don't worry, f2i is defined somewhere else. It is a global variable that is defined another place, and the linkage happens somewhere else. Now, there is a JavaScript syntax called require that you can use to require another JavaScript file, but that's more with Node. You'll get more used to that later on. For now, for HTML, know that this is the best way to get rid of those warnings while you're working with it. Because again, this is editor-based. These variables do nothing on the actual browser side. The browser side, the interpreter completely ignores these variables. These items here are for your editor and editor alone. These are for you. They do nothing for the user's experience at all. This just tells your editor to stop alerting you to it. All right. So now let's go ahead and paste in the Ajax we got. Let's fix our indentations. Yep. Oh, bad indentation copy. So make sure your code looks somewhat like this now. So you got the document ready. Ajax is tabbed in once. The items under Ajax are tabbed in 2 times. Done is on the same line as Ajax because we have the closer. Alert is inside the done. And so the first thing we need to know, we already know that there's a problem with, is this line right here, line 4. Because with the news API, what method is it looking for? Get, because of that green text we had in the document, right? Go back to the documentation. We see sources here. It's looking for a get request right here, not post. So if we send it a post, it's going to yell at us. You have to, APIs are only going to accept what they allow. So if you use the wrong item, it's just going to not give you data. So let's go ahead and change this. So we're noticing a pattern here. So what's the pattern between get on this screen right here and post on this screen? What's the similarity they have? Yeah. You want to be able to infer things. Again, like I said, this is one of the things you're going to learn is start to infer data. Look for patterns. Look for things that make sense. We notice that on the sources, the word get is in all caps. And over here, we notice that post is also in all caps. So if we wanted to make this a get request, it's probably safe to assume this would work, right? This is the get version of post. It's all caps. And yes, all HTTP requests are in capital letters. All right, so what's our URL we want to go to? What is it? The endpoint? Yeah, the endpoint. And so out of this, where does the endpoint end? Sources, yeah. The question mark is what starts the data. So we only need up to here for the URL. This is the URL. We copy that. Go ahead and fix this. My mouse does not want to show up really well on the screen for some reason. Let's go ahead and paste in newsapi.org/v2/sources. And so again, we noticed a pattern last time between the URL. Where did I put that URL we just did a couple seconds ago from this? Did I get rid of that page? I think I might have. Oh, no, I just did this, right. Remember correctly, we noticed a difference or a similarity between these and objects, didn't we last time? So the get items are what formation? What do they come in? What are those two items called? So like this, what is this right here? If we were looking at it like an object.
Key and value.
Yeah, key and value pairs, right? We have the key category and the value of business. We could put business as anything as one of the other items that are acceptable. So we can see a pattern here again. We see that everything in a get after the question mark is a pair of items. It has a key or the variable and the value of that variable, the value in a pair, a key value pair for an object. And so we can see that this data is doing that. It's doing a key value pair. So let's modify this to match our little request we did a couple seconds ago with the business item. Let's do category first. I spelled that right? So category, and what should we put in here? Business, right? Is that correct? Double quotes, right? Because this is a string that we're sending it. The string business. What's the next data item we're sending it? Someone on the left side. What's the next data point we're going to send it? Country. Nice. And what are we going to send this one? What's the data point we're going to give it? US, yes. All right. What's the next data point? Someone from the back half of each table, one of the two sides. Language. And back side of the left table, what are we going to give for language? What is that? What language are we going to give it? What's the data? EN, yeah. English. We want to be sure we get English back. Do we need any more data? Yeah, we need the API. Remember, we're using version 2, which requires the API key now. So now if you want, I would recommend using your API key. And what we're going to do is before we actually push this, we're going to actually show one thing we can do with this to save your code from GitHub. So for now, we're going to put this, but before you push this to GitHub, we're going to have you clear out your API key and leave it empty because you don't want to upload your API key to GitHub. Because there are people out there that are scraping for these items that have just automated processes that just go through GitHub's list of repositories looking for API keys so that they can act as you. On News API, not a big deal. If that happens, you're just going to get blacklisted. You won't be able to access it until you change your API key. On other systems like Google that charge you if you hit a certain number of requests, it is very bad if someone gets your API key there, because then they can just use it like crazy and charge your key. You're going to get the bill for that, which is bad. So it's just good practice, even on these items, just to get used to never, ever putting your API key up on a GitHub repo that is public. But for now, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to go ahead and click on my name so I can get my API key again. And I will be changing this for the nighttime. I'm going to paste this here. So you're going to paste your key in there. And that's all the data we need, right? Sound about right? Anything look bad here? Anything not look great?
The API key name, should the K be capitalized or does that not matter?
You look in our URL we just did. Let's see. No, that's the version 2. Yeah, that's version 2. Did I clear out my...
It is in the URL, but I wasn't sure if it matters.
It is. Well, I don't... From my understanding, it doesn't, but we can always do that. It's just easier to read. So, where URLs don't really care about capitalization. So, and you can always try it. You can always do it with a small, see if we get a response. But for now, we'll follow what the documentation shows. Thank you.
Do we need to put a semicolon after our first section?
After this?
Yeah, right there. Where you're
After this, no, because what's happening on this on line 8? Does anyone see?
type of JavaScript learning. So is it you want it to continue without the semicolon?
Does anyone remember what we did in the reverse a string function? That was my version at the very end. What did I call it? When we do a dot note, when we add a dot and do another function after a previous function. Method chain. And so we see here, what is this doing?
Chain.
Yeah.
Events.
We're chaining on the dot done. So I put a semicolon. What does the semicolon say?
Stop.
Right. This has stopped the code because this is going to yell at me because the JavaScript is going to see this as a whole new, brand new line. It's going to stop whatever it's doing here. And so this is just a nice visual way of seeing the done. Otherwise, I'd have to do this. It just isn't so clean. It's doable, but not as clean as this. This looks a lot nicer. We see dot Ajax on one. We see the dot done on its own line too. And so it just makes it a little cleaner, a little nicer to read. Is it required? No. Some people do this method? Yes, I've seen that. Because it just makes it a little more explicit that it's doing the chain. For now, we're going to do the done just so we know we get whatever message we get back, we're going to see what it does. So let's save this as it is. Go back to our index.html. Since it's already linked, this should work, right? Or at least it should run the code, right? So let's run it. Preview, live preview. Pop this out. Do we see anything? You got a pop-up? Wait, what? I used alert. Ah, I got an error. Hold on. How did I get an error? URL's good. How did I get an issue? I just tested this a little while ago. Let's see, what do I have that's wrong here? Let's see. So did anybody get it? I'm actually curious. Anybody get the alert to pop up?
I got the alert pop up.
When you click submit?
I mean, it came up when I loaded the page.
Oh,
comes up
refresh.
And then
Okay. Huh. Let me try that. Because yeah, submit is going to refresh the page anyway because we don't have the prevent default. Let's see if that helps. Nope, doesn't like me. Let me try this quick. Oh, whoops, wrong page. I want this one. Hmm. That is interesting. Let's see. I'm gonna have to mess with this a little bit. See why I'm getting such an error, because I just did this a couple seconds ago to make sure this would work. And now it doesn't like me. Oh, weird. Why when I explicitly state .get, it actually gives me an error, but when I don't, it doesn't. That's weird. Yeah. So I see, so anybody who got the error about allow access thing, try this. Comment out the method get, because we want it to just default anyway. So do that, because the default is getting. So that's very, very interesting.
Is it something to do with Mac and Windows?
What's that?
Is it something to do with Mac application and Windows?
I think it might have something to do with the browser, honestly. It seems like it might be browser related, but can't guarantee that for sure. Because yours work, but are you on a Chrome or a Mac? What kind of system is that? Windows? Chrome?
Windows Pro.
Windows Chrome. Interesting. Anybody on a Windows get that error?
Yeah.
The get explicit? Hmm. So
I had took it away, and it's still.
pop it out. No, you get the pop. You're getting the alert. That's what we want. We want the alert.
We want the alert.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
Well, what does
getting
the
it
alert
from
say?
beginning. Data save.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that was right.
So
Mine's not working.
if you're not getting an alert pop-up, then you're getting an error. You should see an alert window. If you see the alert window, you're good. Alert window is actually what you want.
I thought it was the opposite. I was like, oh, it's not getting this alert.
That's what you want. So does anybody not get the pop-up? All right. So currently we're getting a pop-up because the alert window is only going to print basic text. So an object is too complex for an alert pop-up. So what's another way we could display data for us as coders, as developers? What can we use? Are we getting an error over here?
I'm not even getting a pop. I think you'll
Oh.
be good after this. HTTPS.
So pop it out. Well, right now you're getting an error message, an error dot right here.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Because
Some
we
sort
have
of
this
code break.
document dot on ready.
Okay.
You have this guy which matches to this. What's closing the document dot on ready? Nothing's closing that, is it?
Nothing. So I gotta.
You need an extra pair of these. No, not there.
Unless you got to leave the other stuff.
You want it here. This is going to close this guy. All this
Okay.
should be inside of that.
Okay. Good.
So now refresh. We'll save and refresh.
Oh my god.
You're still getting the error, so pop that out.
HTTP.
Right click. Inspect.
Yep, that's probably it.
Console.
It won't down.
Hate this.
So that's fine.
Is your API?
Weird. Why are you not getting the alert? You see? Quick peek on you. So we got going on here. That's your code. Let's go ahead and pop that back.
Yeah, another
for a
date.
second.
I'll put category.
Save it.
It's not category?
Double check the URL.
Data, business,
Wait a minute.
country, US, language, EN.
Now you put category too. How come you put data in first?
No, I hear it. I got data,
Something I
country,
did click,
and you
I
do
just can't
too.
track it
Alright,
down.
hold on.
You put data instead of
Refresh.
category.
No error.
And it still works.
Go back to go to network now. Look
Yeah,
at what was
yeah,
pulled.
it did. I don't know why I
Refresh.
did that.
Over. And that's not what I want to pull over. I want to pull over this.
Category.
This is actually the name of the
It still
file.
works.
Yeah, so the way
I got it. I got it. It's
Okay.
a file name issue. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay. Everybody good?
He's close, I think. He had something missing.
Pop it out. Make it a little so you can see the console.
Category, business, country, US, language, ES, API, key.
Oh,
I mean,
no question mark.
No question mark?
Nope. AJ's gonna add that
I
automatically.
have a question mark and it works.
It works.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I spelled source wrong.
There it is. Okay.
All right, sources.
Yeah, you don't need the question mark, by the way.
Not taking that right now.
Well, look at mine. Does mine have one?
Nope. There's a lot up there. My head's like, woo. Yeah, it still works though when I took it out.
Yep.
I'm crazy though. That late, all mine was working. I had two things wrong and it still worked. Fixed them both, it still works.
jQuery is very, very friendly.
You have spell check on
Right.
these editors?
All right, now that everybody's kind of with us, so I'm going to ask this again. So right now, if we notice a little pop-up, it says data saved object object. So we got an object right now. The main thing about the alert thing is the alert can only display a string. It can't display complex items like an object. So it just says, hey, I got an object. That's all it's going to tell us. We, though, as coders, have something we can use to display this data. What can we use? So we can display it for us. Loud? Console.log. It's our friendly, most useful phrase we have access to. So let's go ahead and change that alert to a console.log. Let's change it quick. Go back to our code, refresh, back to the console. Still not quite. What do we want to change here? Do we really need this text of data saved? What are we going to have if we print this out? If we print just the variable? We tell it don't print out a specific data type of string. It was the string that couldn't display the entire complex item of a data, of an object. An object cannot be converted to a string. Keep that in mind. That's one of what's going on here. An object cannot be converted to one giant string of text, which kind of makes sense. And so we want to print the object directly, so we now look at it and look at that. Status OK, sources. What does that look like? Something we can navigate through, right? Huh. This looks really nice. Let's play with this a bit. Let's say we wanted to get that status again. How would we get it? And we want to take a guess as to what we would type in here to get the status? What is it? Is it data? Where are we getting data here? So if I do data.status, what am I getting yelled at? Data is not defined. What is the variable we're currently using?
Message.
We're using message, right? Now we could have used data, but I want to make sure we clarify that data is not the required variable you have to use. It's the most common. Another one is called response too. So there's three types of variables you'll see in other people's code for things like this. You'll see message, you'll see data, and you'll also see response being used. Those are the three common terms used for a reply back from an API: message, data, and response. In this case, technically, actually, the better thing for us to use would be data, because that's what we're asking for from the system, right? We're asking for data, not for a string of text. If the system replied with just text, message would kind of make sense, right? But in this case, message doesn't really fit with our usage. So let's do that. Let's change it to data. Because that makes more sense as to what we're asking for. Right. We are asking News API to send us back data. We could even rename this as something else, like to be more specific to the place we're asking for the data from. What are we what are we getting back? What are we asking this News API for? What are we getting back from it? We're not just getting just any old data from this API. What are we getting from it? What? Text? Status? Well, that's the data point we're looking for, but what explicitly is the newsapi.org sending us back? Sources. So we could technically call data sources. In this case, we want to be even more specific, but it's still pretty good to use data. So we'll stick with data, but that's just, keep in mind that there's no static required variable you have to use in this done or success function.
When people use response, it's completely written out, right? Response.
What's that?
When people use response, it's just response. It's not,
yeah, just a variable. Okay. It's just what they like to use. It's their preference. So we do this now. Let's go ahead and go back here. We'll refresh again. We got our data, and then we got the string OK, because we told it to give us the status here. Status OK. We got that. Cool. So now we know we can check that. So we could say, if OK, we know we got good data back. So I'm going to make a change, though, to this, because I don't use the .done. Again, this will actually trigger even if we didn't actually connect. Let's say newsapi.org dropped for a day. If they lost their internet, their server crashed. We don't want to start acting as if we got the data right away. Because if we don't actually connect to anything, we're not going to have any data. We're not even going to be able to check to see if status is valid. So we only want to run this code that we're going to run if we actually got a successful response, if we actually connected to the API and got back data, right? And so we could do a done, success, but the more one I use is actually, most users use, just so that, again, it makes a much smaller item, is there is something called success inside the options. And this just follows the same kind of syntax as the one. Now, don't forget, since this is inside of an object, you do need the comma at the end of our data. Let me go ahead and hide this for a second so we can get that on one line. There we go. So my line 6, I just added a comma at the end, so that way it can add another object to it, another key value. So I just added the key success for Ajax, saying on success, run this function. And now, just like done, we need somewhere to store what the API gives us back. So again, right here, we're going to put data. This is the information that the newsapi.org is going to give us back, that we're expecting to get. So again, just for the sanity check, we want to do the if we just did, data.status equals, OK. What does this do for us?
Data status is good if you say success.
No.
Somehow show success.
It'll say OK. Remember, success doesn't care whether or not we actually got the data we want back from the API. All that success cares about is did we connect to the API and get some sort of data back. Again, if I go back to my News API here, right here, and I take my API key out and don't give it an API key, yep, that didn't work right. EIEN, I wanted. There you go. It's going to yell at me. It's still going to connect to the API. It's still going to respond with a JSON object. It's just not going to give me the actual sources. So if I was to try to access the sources object right now, the sources value right now, sorry, the sources key right now, I would get an error, or I would just get undefined. And so what I'm doing here is just making sure not only did I connect to the API, I got the data I want, that the API didn't have an issue. So what's one of the cool things about this is that if I get the status error, what could I do with this though? There's still something I could do, right? Because the API doesn't just tell me I got an error. What does it also give me back? Looking at the object on the screen, what does it also give me back?
Tells you exactly why you got the error.
It gives me a message, right? So in my code, right here, if I don't get this status okay, what's a good thing I could do for myself? Print out the error message, right? I could do a console, but again, since it's just a string, I could also do the alert, right? I do this, alert. Now, how do I access this guy? What would I type in? Message. Data.message, right? Now, let's force this. So I'm going to go ahead and, for now, I'm going to cut my API key out of this object, just so I can cause the same issue I'm currently seeing. I'm going to Control X or Command X and get rid of my API key. Save it. I'm also going to comment out this done item for now because I don't want it running this no matter what. So I'm just going to comment that out. I can always re-enable it if I ever want to. That's a nice thing to do just to see that I'm getting data back. It's a nice initial test, but it's not good for the overall for the long run. I saved, right? Yeah, I did. Okay. So I refresh now. I'm getting the same error I was just getting 2 seconds ago now. Why? You don't like me.
So that like red circle the X, but it's
Okay, there. No. 4.1 unauthorized. Okay. Wait. Well, that's great. It's giving me an unauthorized. It's not actually responding back. So I'm thinking this is actually going to give me a fail. It's actually giving me a 401 message. That's weird. I was able to access it. It's interesting. So the website does actually respond with a 401 code, which is a error code, so it won't run success. So some APIs won't do that. They're not that flushed out. This one actually is flushed out where it's actually going to send back the correct error code of 401 unauthorized. 401 will not trigger the success function. So this would actually require a fail function. So, what's that?
We didn't get the error.
Nope, you wouldn't.
When we created it. So if I refresh, it just. I will get
Go to network. I'll make sure it actually does load. Refresh again. All right, hover over that. Oh, did you save the file?
Oh, yeah.
It's still loading the API key. Why is yours still loading the API? Oh, because you didn't take the API key out.
Right.
Right, I cut that, so
No.
you need to get rid of that and the comma as well,
That.
and that.
Oh,
Now save it.
I need one bracket, right?
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
If you refreshed it now, you'd see that we're getting the 401 error. So we got a good API here. This API was set up correctly.
I was using in my quote generator, I was using response.status.
Again, it's just a variable name. You can use whatever you want. I could make that Jim. I don't have to have it be data. Response, data, message, none of that matters. Remember, just because we use this, one of the things I like to say, I like to break the norms. A lot of things won't explicitly state that what they put there is a variable that you can put whatever you want. You just get to this assumption that this is what you have to enter. I can literally put the name Jim here, and that will work. It's just not it just looks dumb. I actually won't do anything. This would actually work fine if I put my API key back, which now since I did that, let me go ahead and paste that back in. You guys can use undo first. Save. Let me just do this quick, just so you can see that it works and that this is a valid item. Don't actually type in this. Alert Jim.status. Just to show you that again, what you put in there doesn't actually matter. I have an extra parenthesis somewhere, apparently. Oh, I'm missing a bracket actually. My success function is in closing. Yay, I deleted one too many. So I do that. We see that Jim is allowed too. So that variable you put here is not required. When you look at a lot of examples, you'll see response, you'll see message, you'll see data. Those are completely arbitrary.
I read the other day that the strict versus weak equality thing for the equal signs there, it's bad practice to use 2 instead of use the 3, the strict.
Some people feel it's better. So what is the difference if you're going to use that? If you're going to follow anything like that, what is the difference? Really? You're going to look it back up again?
It's on the
Enki.
Yeah.
Yes. So what is the reason for using triple equals? What does that do differently than double equal? What's the difference?
Triple equals Boolean.
Not a Boolean.
It requires in order for it to match, it has to be like the same string or the same number.
What's the term? What's the term for those? What's the number and what's the string? Louder? Yes, the triple equal adds one extra level for JavaScript at least. Remember, JavaScript is friendly. Just down here quick. JavaScript will mark that as the same. My understanding and how I work on it. This is okay for JavaScript because they are the same in essence. JavaScript will mark those as same. This in JavaScript will also be marked as the same because anything other than a 0 or empty string is considered true. Empty string, null, blank, 0, those are all equivalents to false. Anything other than that is considered true. Again, JavaScript will find that as true, as equivalent. This, on the other hand, will say no. The triple equal adds one extra level of data type validation as well. So not only does it see if the two items are equal, it will actually make sure that the data type is the same. Am I equating a number in a string, or am I equating a number in number? Where this will actually result in false, this will equal true. And so in certain cases, it is better to do this because then, of course, when you're running your later on functions, you're going to know that you're running it on the right data type. Is it required? Some people are like, eh. Because, again, in JavaScript, data type is very fluid. This is not so much an important item here. If we're looking for the number 20, we have a string 20, it's kind of wishy-washy. But, of course, in this case, if we wanted to use it as a number and do a mathematical function on it, we would have to make sure we do parse int at some time. Where if we knew we were going to run mathematical items, it would be better to make sure that what we're using is a number, the number 20, and not a string of 20. And so this would work better for in the case we know we're going to run mathematical equations on it, mathematical functions on that item. We want to make sure it's not only a number, but it's actually that it's not only the string 20. We want to make sure it's actually a number 20, a data type that we can actually run mathematical functions on. We can't do math on a string. Remember, if we use the plus symbol on a string, it's going to default any other numbers to a string and do concatenation. This will always take whichever number, whether it's on the left or the right, doesn't matter which one the number is. As soon as one of these are a string, it goes from addition to concatenation. It doesn't matter which one is the string. It just matters that one of them is a string. It can't do math on a string. Now, if you did parseInt, it'll do normal math, but as long as one of these is a string, it takes that addition function or that addition parameter and converts it into a concatenation symbol. So we could here decide to do triple equals. In this essence, we know that we're going to get strings back from the data. It's not too much of a concern to validate that it is a triple equal, but it could be good practice to do that. In a situation where we're not sure what data type we're going to get back, it does help to use the triple equal to confirm and ensure the correct data type is given to us, to ensure that we got a string and not a number, or vice versa, make sure we got a number and not a string. Because again, JSON objects can send back a number data type. They can give you a number without quotations, and that'll be treated like a number. You'll get more to that as we go into the other APIs you'll be working with. But for now, yes, this actually works perfectly fine. And that's the difference between double and triple equals. Nice question. I do have the audio on, right? I hope I have the audio on. Yep, I do. Okay, good. Sanity check. Okay. So now we know we got data back. We know we have the data. So let's go ahead and look back at that data type again. Let's go ahead and console log our data. I'm going to switch Jim back to data now, so hold on a second. So I match you guys again. We're not going to use Jim. We're going to go back to data. Be good computer scientists. Use responsible variables. So if we go back to our screen now, we can see we have our data. And so what's the data we actually want from this? Sources, right? We want to take our sources and put stuff in our drop-down menu. And sources are what do we want to put into our drop-down menu. So if we take a look at one of these objects, one of our sources, what item here do we want to put into our drop-down menu? Name, right? Yeah. We can use name. And so let's use the practice that we've been learning from the last item. So one of the things what we're gonna do is, again, we want to do what with sources? Sources is what type of data type? It's an array of objects, right? That complex object we talked about. So this is, again, why we practice this, because now we're going to work with exactly what you guys have been working with, an array of objects. This time, though, it's not one we already know the data type, the full data of. It's one that's coming from an API. It's information coming from somewhere else. Now, yes, we know the keys they're going to use because we read the documentation. We know that every single source is going to have a name key. So we're good there. We just don't know. We don't know how many they're going to send back at any time. Right now, we know they're going to send us 5, but let's say they partner with another business news source. Now we have 6. Let's say one of these, Fortune, suddenly closes shop and says, I'm not doing news anymore. Or decides, I'm not going to work with newsapi.org anymore. I'm going to create my own API that people are going to use, and we're not going to go through newsapi.org anymore. They drop, no longer used, and our array shrinks. So again, we want that dynamic piece of it, because we never know what's going to happen to our source. Our source can add or remove information at any point. We want to make sure that our code can handle that. So how do we go through the sources? What structure do we use? Yeah, for loop. It's an array. What's our conditional? I is less than. Data.sources.length. Now again, in this case, why do I not need brackets around sources of any kind? This is an array, right? Don't I need this and something in there, right? Do I? And why?
You're accessing the sources. You're now asking
we're running length on the entire array. We're not running length on an individual piece of the array. We want to get the length of the whole array. And so if you don't give it a bracket, you're referencing the whole object, the whole item array, every single thing, the entire bracket. And so in this case, there's certain things like length. And length is going to now run against the entire array, which is going to give us all 5 in this case. And if, again, it changes, we'll get that new number. But in this case, we're going to get 5 back. And then, of course, our incrementer, I++. So now we're going to show that we can mix in some non-jQuery too. We're going to go back to some JavaScript because, again, that's what you guys have been doing from the past, and that's what we already know. So let's go ahead and use that. So what do we need to do now? We have a source. We have one of the sources. What do we need to do to put this on our website? If you remember back to what you guys have just been working on.
You gotta get the element by ID.
Do we have to do get first, or what do we do first?
Document.get element by ID.
What are we getting, though?
We're getting a place to put
What are we putting?
the API information.
All right, we're putting the information, but are we putting the information in any tag here, or what are we going to create a tag first?
Oh yeah.
There it is. Right, yeah. We need to make sure we have some place to put this first. So we first want to do document.create element. Remember that? And from the last item, what type of element? So just again, this is from what you probably just did. What element do we need to create for a drop-down menu? Option tag, right? Does anyone remember what the node name is for an option tag? All caps. Yes. Option, all caps. Like, I know this, I created this. And what do we have to do with this item? I'm missing something in my line, right? What am I missing? Louder? Variable, to store it so we can then make our changes to it, because we got to give it some attributes, right? Our source. I'm going to do that because we're creating a source. Our source, create element document.create element option. What's the first attribute we need? Do we need an attribute to get it to display? Let's do that first. Again, small pieces. Do we need any attributes to get it to display?
The way we did last time, we passed it a function.
Really? Oh, wow.
We set an attribute to onClick with parameter function.
Or we're not going to do any sort of like on-click trigger this time. We just want to display the sources. We have a submit button that'll take whatever we submitted and send it over. So we don't need any functions this time. This one's going to be a little simpler than what you created, actually. There's no on-click function display information yet. Now, you could always change our feature to not need the submit button to then trigger, yes, on submit or on change, show the headlines for that item. You can definitely modify this and make it better.
So for this instance, we just use
The NH, yeah. And we're just going to give it, what are we going to put here then? What's the, how do we access the information? So if we go back to our page, we look at our items, how do we get this right here? Data.sources. Someone on the left, what do we do next? The left is ironically quiet right now. Someone from the left, give me it after this. What's up? I, right? Yep. And then the next item, someone other than TAs. So neither Greg or Kyle, someone else. After data.sources I, what's last? Everybody agree? Name? Yeah. So we want to say, after we get the element, we're going to do that. What's the last step we need to do? Is there another step? Hold on. Non-TA. Someone here should know this very personally because I kind of embarrassed them when I did this to them last time. Jackie, do you remember what we have to do next? Because I embarrassed you last time with this. So we created the, yeah. See, you do remember. Jackie, put this away from me. I was gonna say this should be something you should be jumping at. It's like I know this. I got embarrassed for this. That's why you shouldn't keep quiet because I'm gonna call you out again. Remember? I called you out last time because you were quiet. You should be like, I need to jump on this so he doesn't call me out again. I totally am. I know you guys, so it's not a cold call to me. I'm not the one that's going to be embarrassed by doing it. So we can do the document dot get element by ID, so we can then attach it to that item. So everybody who wants to take a look at the website to know what our element ID is? Where are we putting this? Louder?
Selection.
Anybody disagree? Selection is the ID, or does anybody disagree? Selection it is. Let's do it. Selection. Remember, it's dot append child, so that we always take. We don't want to delete what we just put in there. We want to always add something else to the end. Always adding to the end. We want to give it source. Let's see if this works. Let's go back to our page. Let's refresh. Look at that. Takes it a second, but then look inside your drop-down menu.
I have to find this unexpected token.
Yep, that means you have a symbol that means you either don't have enough brackets or too many brackets. Take a look.
Mine's messing up and I can't.
Okay. Let me go ahead and turn off the audio for a second on the stream so we can go through. So everybody on the stream, take a second, pause it. If you're having issues, communicate with your fellow students and find your issues or call over the teacher. So I don't care too much about business, so I'm going to change mine to technology, and I'll look at my dropdown. I have entirely new information. By changing what I request from the API, my dropdown menu fully changes. This is a very, very dynamic site. I could even create, if I ever wanted to, a text field that could ask the user for the category they want and have it only pull from the dropdown menu categories that the user wants. The next item here is that when I select one of these, what I really want to do is when I submit this, I want it to now display underneath it the top articles from that source. And that's what your guys' homework is going to be. You have an example of reaching out, grabbing data from a source, pulling it back, and displaying stuff on the page. All you're going to do now is take exactly what we just did with this guy. You're going to use the top headlines endpoint. You're going to notice it only requires 2 items, in essence. The source's ID, which we have access to that, right, technically? In our object right here, on each of these guys, they have the ID right here. So what I'm going to help you guys walk through, one last thing we're going to do is actually get it so that when we hit the submit button, it's going to display the ID. That's the last thing I'm going to help you guys with, and then your guys are going to be tasked taking that ID and actually getting news articles. And all I'm asking for is just the display. I don't need it to be fancy or anything, just display the title, the actual article's header. That's it.
How do we find our API key?
That's what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to expect you guys to not actually upload your API key, but here's one of the tricks. So the tricks I use is an extra file, which is actually going to entirely correlate with what Lauren was asking about. So I do touch key.js. Key.js. And here I'm going to do var API key in all caps. This identifies it as a global static variable. It is a variable that should not be changed. It is static and it is global. Hit equal. And in quotes, I'm going to take that API key, copy it, paste it. Now, right now, if I was to do git add, git commit, git push, it's going to take all these. So there's a new item that you want to learn about called louder? Called .gitignore. So what I'm going to have you do is just do this now. Touch, where is it? Thank you. Touch .gitignore. Oh, right, the pull. When you did clone, you should already be in a parenthesis master branch. So again, you can just Google search gitignore file. Specific file. We just want to ignore a file. We go straight to the GitHub page. Get a global gitignore, so it's a global one that's going to fit everybody, but explicit repository excludes. So they have the gitignore manual. Let's look at that. Actually, you know what was better? Actually, we just noticed the example gitignore files. Let's look at that. So let's see. They have, so these are actually built in for certain specific languages. So that actually doesn't really fit us. It could, but I want to look at something a little simpler. Examples. This is an example gitignore file. Well, actually, that's the actual terminal. Hold on. All right, untracked cat exclude. You're not giving me what I want, are you? Oh, here we go. Cat documentation.gitignore, ignore generated HTML files, star.html. Ignore accept foo.html, which is allowed, which we want to maintain. I want to keep that. So really all it does is we just have to have a line in our gitignore with the name of the file that we want to ignore. We can also ignore all explicit data types or certain file types by doing a star.filetype. So let's say we want to ignore all .zip files. We could do star.zip. We want to ignore all image files. We could do star.jpg. Say don't upload to GitHub any of my pictures. Any files we don't want to do. We can also even have it do all folders by just doing the name of the folder /star. Everything in this folder don't do. Remember, in terminal, star is a wildcard symbol. So like here, we can just do key.js. Save it. If I now do git status, really love that red coloring. No, let me, I get a little, I can't do that. Really wish I remembered how to do zoom in. But it says modified index.js and it says git ignore. Do you see key.js in your untracked files? Anywhere in that? Is key.js noticed by the system? No, it's ignoring key.8.js because of the git ignore. We now do git add -a, git status again. We can see again, new file, git ignore, modified index.js. We didn't do anything to the index to the HTML file, so it's not modifying that. Again, key.js, which we know is there because we do ls right now. We will see, oh, I didn't hit that right. I hit is, ls. We see key.js is exactly where that index.js file that it's finding. .gitignore, why is .gitignore not showing up there? Anyone remember? Right, Greg like this with the whole, it's the stealth system behind it. I remember that day, that was fun. It's in stealth mode because of the dot in front of it. It's got its cloaking device on. So we don't see it in the ls, but we know it's in the same directory. So .gitignore is telling Git to ignore the key.js file. So I'm actually going to do quickly git reset head right now. Star, because I want to undo all those things, because again, I haven't finished updating stuff. I just wanted to showcase that. I just wanted to use that so you can actually see it in green, which is a lot easier to read. So, really? You want me to actually type the file? Fine. Git reset head. Git ignore. Git reset head. Index.js. Thank you. Now it's back to the reds. Okay. I just want to get back to that for a second because again, we added this, but right now I still have my key here. So let's kill that and put in the all cap version, API key. Now this is still going to yell at me because of why?
Key.js.
Right. We haven't included it. So one, this file doesn't know it. So we need to do what to this file so that it stops yelling at us. What's that? Well, not for the file. The file doesn't care about the linking. Remember, where do we link the JS files together? In the HTML file. So for the JS file, so that it stops yelling at us, what do I do here? The global comment at the top, right? That comment at the top that tells it, oh, this is a variable that exists. Trust us. We know what we're doing. We're human, even though we make mistakes constantly. Now, the cool thing about this is that I don't even have to do multiple lines. I can do spaces, and it'll count them each individually. So I can do global, $ space, API key space, and every single variable after that. So I can keep it on one line if I want. If I like the visuals of having it on each of their own lines, I can do that. It's however I want to do it. But as soon as it's on a comment that starts with the word global, every word after that is included in that. So now, though, I now have to actually make sure that that item is linked. So if we go back to our index file, where should we link that file? Where should we put that script tag? What's that? Above index.js? Why is that? Right. Exactly. So we load that API key variable before it's asked for it in the index file. If we do index.js first, it's going to try to access API key before it's read. I'm just going to do key.js. And now a good practice is, before we do that, is either here or, more preferably, what I do is up in the head over here, I do a quick comment right here. Like this. Called requirements. And then tab, insert, page requires a key.js file with the following format. Var API key equals, and then you usually like square brackets or some sort of bracketing. Or like this, I would do this one, API key. From newsapi.org. Did I goof that? Oh, right. What is a stupid thing for? What's that? Oh, right, it's dash dash. That. You can see how much I do HTML. Like, I don't remember that. So this is just for anybody who then decides to fork and download my GitHub repository, knows, hey, if you're going to use this, it's only going to work if you provide a file called key.js and give it this line. If you don't do this, your thing's not going to work. It's not my fault, it's yours. A lot of people would also add this in the README file that a lot of you have seen on looking at other APIs or other GitHub profiles. So you could also add it there in the README. Does this one have that? No, it doesn't. Right. What's that? Oh, it's just script source key.js. Yeah, very simple. It's a locally stored file.
How do you access it when you're putting it in the data object?
Hold on a second. Oh, there's README. So like here, I would also put the same thing. I'd be like H1 API requirements. P tag keys.js file. I'm sorry, key.js. Sorry, key.js file, not included. File format. Var key equals API key from newsapi.org. And these are some of the ways. It's not the only ways. There's multiple ways to give this information. I'm just giving you multiple ways so that when you do create that public repo that you know that other people might want to look at, if they want to download it and use it, they at least know to do this. This is just you being a professional, letting those people know that are going to maybe download your repo or take a look at your code to know that if it doesn't, it's not going to work by default. It's not going to work out of the box. That's what this is telling them. This is not going to work out of the box. You need to do this to get it to work. It's just you covering your button away. So they can't come back and be like, this code doesn't work, it's crap. Because the README, when you look at a, wait, why is, it shows that I had a README. Or am I in the wrong folder? Whoops, I'm in the wrong folder. This one doesn't have a README. So you can make the READMEs are a README in all caps .md. It's another type of markup language that is more for a blog post, I believe. So you can create that, and I would just add that little bit that I added there here to mine. So that's an example of the README clarification you would give. And just to showcase what that looks like, if I go back to not this one, go back to CareerDevs and look at the other template file I gave you guys. Where is that one? Complex object. Was that on my full profile? Did I really not do that here? Oh, come on. My profile, repositories. Yep, I put it over here. A readme.md file does this. It shows up on the actual main screen of the repo. So that's what a readme.md file does. It does this.
Yeah, that's why it's not a text file.
Yeah. So it'll actually have the formatting. So that's what a readme.md does.
Do we add a readme this and that? I mean, here we add a readme for this.
You could. And then you just have to do a git pull, though. Keep that in mind. And so you would get yelled at because currently you have changes that are not committed, and then you have a pull that you got to do too. So it's not fun. You could do it, though, yes.
If I committed changes to what we made already, and now we move to the API key.
You might want to change your key because even though, yes, you're going to take it out, people can go and look at previous commits and see the API key.
Can I undo the commit that I did?
If you pushed it, no.
I didn't push
There you can, but it takes a lot to do. It's easier just to go into your use API and get a new key. That would actually be faster and easier for you. Nicely done, though, actually committing stuff as we go. It's a good thing that you were committing as we went. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the last step. Get you guys going so we can see that we can access the ID. So if we remember back to what we were doing with the assignment, what did we use to get the index or to store the index for us in a later usage? Was there an attribute we used on the option tags or the radio tags? Was that? Push. Not with get. We're done with get. So now we want to go ahead and make sure that when we hit that submit button, we get the information from the API. So we get that ID number. So there's two things so there's something we can use. What is not client facing or user facing on the drop-down menu items? Is there an attribute we can use? Louder? Value. Does anyone remember that? There's that value attribute that is not client facing that we can use later on as data storage. So what could we store in value? What could we put there? What's that? The I variable. So here's a problem with that, though. So I'm going to just showcase one quick issue with that. As soon as we hit this parameter right here, this little bracket here, do we have access to any of the sources anymore? Lauren, shaking your head. Does that mean we don't? Do you remember why? What's the word?
I don't remember why.
Okay.
But I know that we don't, because we're
Yes.
pulling where it's a dynamic.
Because we all remember my evil joke of inside the house. We're trying to view inside of a house from a window, right? We're going to get arrested. Scope, yes. Remember, as soon as we leave this bracket, we no longer have access to the data variable in all of our brackets. Now, we could make a global variable and store all this stuff for later use. But is there something else we could use? Because really, is there any information? What do we need from here in order to do this? So looking at an object right now, this one here, what item are we caring about right now out of this object? The ID, right? Do we need any other information? We don't need anything else in this version of the project. So why store all of this data? Why make an object to store data if all I need is that ID? Could I maybe just store the ID in my value? Does that make sense? A little less. We're saving ourselves having to store user memory, storing this entire source data. Yep. Quickly. Get that back, get that back, get that back. There we go. Okay. We're back. My stream's still good. Looks fine. Cool. Okay. All right. So, what I was saying again, we can just take that ID because that's the only data we care about. We don't need to store everything. You don't always have to store everything. Remember that. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Efficiency also matters. The only thing we care about this is this thing right here. All the other data, as soon as we use the name, we can chuck it. We don't need access to this anymore. And value doesn't just store numbers. It can store anything in a string format. So let's go ahead and do that instead. So how do we add an attribute? Anybody remember? Set attribute. What's the attribute we're setting again? Value. And how are we going to set it? How do we navigate the object again? Last person on the left side. Someone speak. What's the last piece? Someone louder? ID. And this will give us the ID of that source. All right, so the next thing, the last piece we want to do, we just want to make sure we get that ID. I'm not going to show you how to actually go and pull the data, but is there an ID for our submit? So our form, does it have an ID? Form does. And what's the command we used last time? On submit. So let's use the Ajax version of it. Just $. Classes do periods. So, which means we don't want a period. We want the hash, the pound number, ID number. Is the way I look at it. It's the number symbol. Number, source. Now let's see, is it submit or on submit? Does anyone remember for Java jQuery? Let's look it up. Something called submit a form Ajax. That don't sound right. Let's see. Ajax form, what is all this? This is not what I want. We just want to submit, so it's .submit, not on. For jQuery, so yes. Remember that. jQuery simplified a lot of things, and sometimes the simplification was just as simple as removing the word on. Like, yay, thank you, jQuery. But at the same time, though, we can't really yell at it too much because it's also saving us the document dot element by ID source dot on submit. So it is saving us a good amount of text and typing by being able to just do this. So when we do a submit, do we need anything in the function item? Anyone remember?
Data?
Not data. What's that? What's that?
Is it a post?
Not a post. So again, what is the submit item? What do we call that? It's an event, right? It's an event handler. So inside a function, the common, again, this is a variable, we can name it whatever we want, but the common variable name is E or event. So I actually hate E, to be honest. To me, E is a minimizer variable. And once I do sometimes use E because I know it by heart now, but for a while I used event because it was just, again, reminding me what it was. This is an event handler and this is the event, so we can do what command do we need to do here? Because what happens when you click the submit button in a form? What does the web page do? What's that? It reloads the page, right? And so we want to do it. We want to do what to that behavior? We want to prevent the default behavior. So we just do event.prevent default. Why is it yelling at me? Really? Oh, right. I had forgot a dot. Sorry. Still yelling at me. Oh, right. Oh, wait. Am I still? Oh, I'm still in the Ajax call. Whoops. Sorry, everybody. My bad. I'm still in the Ajax call. Cut your stuff and put it after the Ajax, because this is something we want to be doing outside of the Ajax. So, still doesn't like me. Sorry, what?
Outside the Ajax, but still inside the object.
Yes, we still want inside the document ready. We don't want this doing anything until the page entirely loads. Still doesn't like something. What? My code looks fine. $sign. Oh no, there's no dot. Okay, so thought so. I was like, am I going insane? There is no dot. It was just because it was inside the other object. Just because it was inside the Ajax. That's why. Okay. I'm like, there doesn't need to be a dot there. I'm like losing my mind. There we go. Okay. So yeah, no dot. Like, I'm not that rusty with jQuery, am I? And then, of course, is there a problem with line 25? Is there a problem with it? What's that? I have a semicolon. Wait, a little louder? I can't hear you from over here.
My line 25 is your 26.
Well, not that. Right. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yes, you can put a semicolon there. So my event.prevent default line, is there anything wrong with it? No. Visually, you guys should be yelling at me right now. Come on, people. It's indented too much. I need you guys to keep paying attention to indentation. That helps you so much in the long run. It makes code so much easier to see where there's a problem in your code. So always, if someone else has bad indentation, that should drive you insane when you see that. It is a pet peeve for me when I see bad indentation. It's one of the first things I'm like, I need to fix this. I can't even look at the code when I see bad indentation. It gets that bad for me now because I've just seen how much it helps to have that indentation. So you need to get to that point where when you see bad indentation, it drives you nuts. Because if you ever submit code to a long-term developer that is unindented, it is going to drive them nuts and they're not going to look at it either. When I was at eMoney and I saw the code that was on screen, I wasn't really allowed to go look at it closely, but it was very, very indented. It was nice and indented, very, very the same. So indentation is huge in all companies. What we're going to do, we're just going to do an alert. And we want to just get that ID number that we stored. So how do we do that? What item are we going to access for that ID number? What's that? Yeah, we're going to do our favorite command. Okay, our second favorite. Good that our favorite is console.log. I like it. Yes, our second favorite, get element by ID, or our most commonly used. Selection. Yep. And what are we accessing out of it? Exactly. Dot value. Save it. Let's go see if this works. So preview, run. Not that. Wrong item. I'm in the index file. Don't do that. Preview, live preview. Pop it out. I always like having it out there. Have it. It printed out. Good. I think I got the wrong one open, actually. Hold on. Yeah, this is the one I want. Fresh. So let's go ahead and check out. I'm going to go to Hacker News myself. Hit submit. Does that look good? That looks like the information we want, right? That's our ID.
This is what I was hoping for.
So everybody make sure you get this. And so now you have the information you need to go to newsapi.org again and ask for the headlines. And then all you need to do is just display this in like a list format. It doesn't even need to be fancy. Just display the title of the article. That's all I care about right now for tomorrow.
Should we be able to link to the article?
We'll do that tomorrow.
Or just
The main goal today is the main thing I care about right now is that you guys can actually get the data, loop through it, and just display the title. We'll actually go through doing more with that tomorrow and take it a little farther. And if you guys have the time and want to do more, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to stop you. But the main goal of this item is just to get you the practice of reaching out, getting the data, and displaying it. That's the main goal for this item.
Does all that go within the Ajax method or function?
Sorry, what?
Does all of just display it? That's all under the Ajax?
Yes, Ajax. So you already have the item how to go out and pull the data, yes, and how to create it and how to display it to the page. You can see it. You have a fully functioning example of reaching out, getting data, and adding it to the page. There is one other thing you do have to do, though. You have to make one modification to your index file. What's the one modification you might need to make? Is there a spot for the articles? So you will need to decide where and how you want, where to actually display those articles. Like I said, I don't need anything complex. The main goal for this is to see that you guys can go out with this ID, go to newsapi.org, say, hey, give me the articles for this source, and then display those. So that whenever I switch to a new source, click submit, I get new information. What's that?
This is starting to get advanced.
That's the whole point. And this is why we've been prepping so much. We've been playing with objects. We've been playing with objects for almost a week and a half so that you guys can be ready to do this. This is all objects. why we took the time to really dig into objects. Because later this week, what we're going to be getting into is we're actually going to go through and actually examine a weather API and also YouTube API. We're going to give you additional items you could use to practice pulling from YouTube. So you'll see some complex APIs very shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and make the assignment for you guys. I'm going to post it up on the classroom, and you guys will be tasked with doing that. So this new GitHub repo that you just made is the one you're going to submit. So make the change to this one, submit that. So
That we made the git ignore. We don't need to do anything else with that. We can
No.
just do our git commit and git push.
Yep. You had the key.js file. You had the git ignore. I'm going to use that too. So I'm going to have my key.js file. I'm just going to use that to test to make sure yours works. I can't hear from over here. Sorry.
One other question about.
All right, let me go ahead in 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream. You now can work on your own stuff. Check the classroom for your assignment. And if you have any questions, check with your TAs and your instructors. Keep coding.